staple of the War of 1812. Today we're at Charlestown Navy Yard, U.S.S. Alright, so here we are on the first deck, first lower deck of the U.S.S. Constitution. You can see there are a lot of cannons here. Those are rarely like ship warfare, it's just they come up and broadside each other and shoot as many cannons as possible. So more cannons equals more firepower, and it's pretty good for early naval. Alright, so we're here on the second lower deck here. So over here we have the hammocks. This is where all the regular crew member and ship members would sleep. It's where they spend their nights. So as you can see, it's very cramped in here. My head's going over that from thin. That's not going to be tall. Over there is where the officer would sleep. They have their own rooms because they're officers, so that means they have special privileges like having their own rooms. So this is one of the officers' quarters here. They have their own special area where they can single room. They don't have to worry about anybody else and any people around them. Alright, so we're here at the stern. This is steer the ship with a compass. There's also some deck guns up here, like this one right here. There's just more guns, just some more firepower. You can see some more the holes, which hopefully have more guns as well. And then we get the masts. We can't get up there. That's half the things up there. Small ships calling out in directions. Right, we're here at the bow of the ship here, the front. And this is a good opportunity to talk about the differences between the cannons. We have two types here. So we have the longer cannons and the shorter cannons. The shorter cannons were made for a more shorter range engagement, more better for broadsides. Of course, all cannons could be used for a broadside. Not like you wouldn't use this one if some ship was running up on you. However, this cannon, as you see, is longer. It had a longer range. So a ship much farther out, you could aim with this rather than small cannons. But it was still useful at a short range.
So in the War of 1812, the U.S.S. Constitution actually had a lot of success, and because of that, it gained the super famous nickname Old Ironsides. And what's really cool about the ship is, although they had to do maintenance for it and they've had to restore it to how it is today, it's still actually on water. And periodically, the Navy, since they still actually work on the ship, they'll actually take it out and bring it on to Boston Harbor, which is really cool because it's super rare to see such an old ship that's still operational like it is today. And what's really cool about the ship is you'll notice it has the white stripe. So a lot of the times back in the war, British ships didn't have the white stripe, but after America kind of established themselves and we actually became a nation able to defend ourselves and not just fight off a revolution, we put the white stripe on the ship to signify that this is our nation and to show British ships that it's not, so they're going against us, and it kind of shows American colors. Just like similarly today, on modern ships, different countries will have different colors, although most of them are gray. Now countries will have special camos to help blend into the sea. And while this isn't a camo, it's definitely a similar marking to show that it's an American ship. So the U.S. Constitution was part of the War of 1812, which was almost like a continuation of the American Revolution, where in the original revolution, the Americans wanted to actually free themselves from Britain, but in this one, they wanted to show that we can have our own navy, that we can actually rival them in North America. And what's really interesting about this war is that the Americans were able to hold their own with ships against a much more powerful British Navy. And if you look at the amount of ships that the British had versus the Americans had like exponentially less ships than the British did. And the fact that the Americans were able to use the Constitution and actually have such success against Great Britain really showed that we were an up and coming nation, and that we were able to actually rival one of the greatest powers in the world, especially naval-wise.
So the Constitution's first battle saw it take on H.M.S. Guerriere at sea about 600 miles from Boston. So the Guerriere and the Constitution approached each other, with the Guerriere firing off the first volley for the shore of their Constitution. The Constitution closed the distance, and while the Guerriere continued to fire at the Constitution, the cannonballs would just bounce off the sides of the hull, giving it its nickname, Old Ironsides. So then, when the Constitution was close enough, it opened up a devastating broadside from most of its cannons, which shredded the Guerriere. You can see here, toppled all its masts and ripped up the sides and killed a lot of people, wounded many more. So the Constitution won the day and was able to took the survivors from the Guerriere and set it ablaze. And they came back to Boston to repair and drop off all the prisoners. That's victorious, and it became a staple in the war, and it was spread out like as propaganda, like, oh, the Old Ironsides, our ships are indestructible. It was a real morale boost for the war.
So, although a lot of the ships had cannons, a lot of the seamen and the sailors on the ships actually had small arms for self-defense. And what's really cool about the Constitution is it actually had some of the small arms that were on the ship. You can tell that some of these guns, so they were using, since it was the early 1800s, they would use a lot of muskets and flintlock style guns with swords still. And what's really cool about these is the top gun was marked Harper's Ferry and the bottom one is marked Springfield. And the thing about these is Harper's Ferry was the original United States military armory in Virginia, and eventually they started a second one in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is not far from where we are today, about 2 hours. But so Springfield was created because they didn't want to just have all their armory in one state, and they'd rather have it kind of diversified, so in case one got wiped out, we still had the other one. And it's really cool to see just the differences. They're very similar, they're modeled after the same patterns, but there are slightly differences to show that they're built in different areas. And it's really cool to see local history remaining Springfield and all these armories being represented in these museums. And not only did they have muskets, but they also had flintlock pistols as well. And while the muskets were very long and they had the range, these pistols actually helped. So they took a long time to load, but the pistols actually helped for shorter range, and it was much faster than a full-on musket. While they were not as effective as they were full-on than muskets, they were actually very well done for if your ship got boarded and you were kind of backed into a corner, you were able to have this to actually rely on. So, in the War of 1812, the war itself was actually based a lot on honor and merit. And what would happen was, if there was a successful commander or a successful admiral, they'd be awarded with almost the spoils of war when their conflict was over. What's really interesting are these the actual trophies and awards given to the captains of these ships, and you can see that these silver urns were given to Captain William Bainbridge and Captain Isaac Hull after the Constitution had success against the British ships. And what's really cool is they didn't only get these trophies, they got these congressional medals too. And similar congressional medals are still given today, but not like how they were back then. And it's just really cool to see that the military back then was a lot more honor-based versus today, where we still have the honor, but it's not like how it is back then. It's not where you were given awards for this sort of thing. I mean, we have the Medal of Honor and we have medals, but we don't receive trophies anymore. And it's really cool to see that you can actually show the history of just the honor in the military and how all these things are preserved today.
Thank you for joining us today as we visited the most decorated ship and famous ship of the War of 1812, the U.S.S. Constitution.